Hello. Today, dear viewer, I would like to ask you a serious question. When was the last time you used Marines? Well, I mean, you probably use them quite often, right? If you're playing as the US or Japan or the Brits and you ever need to do a naval invasion, they're well worth the research slot. Wait, wrong game. Hang on, EU4 has Marines too? Well, if you're anything like me, you'll probably have seen the plus 10% Marine force limit in the government reforms, and are dimly aware that there are such a thing as Marines existing in the game, but have never really given them any more thought than that. Well, today I decided to change that and to force myself to use Marines. Can you succeed in EU4 if you only use Marines? These poor underutilised divisions surely deserve a little love, and surely being forced to use them for the duration of a campaign is bound to instill in me a new respect and fondness for these little guys, right?
I cannot describe what this challenge did to me. I think I lost a part of myself forever.
Do you like
Pain.
Do you like
Suffering.
Then give this challenge a go! So, what are the rules? Number 1. I may only and exclusively use Marines for my land units. The one exception is that I am allowed to click the sortie button if necessary, though these are temporary units which disappear as soon as the battle is over, so don't really count in my opinion. Number 2. No allies or vassals. Ever. I mean, we don't want things to be too easy, right? Number 3. No save scumming. Edit, I was supposed not to be save scumming, but...
You do not understand the amount of suffering I went through with this challenge.
I did save scum, but only in the case where not doing so would have meant that I would have had to restart. Again. And finally, rule 4, I must play... the best country on earth. Yep. Rugen. What, you haven't heard of it? That mighty, powerful, earth-shaking great power that is Rugen? In my mind, there was no more fitting choice for this challenge than the releasable island nation of Rugen on the North German coastline. Since Rugen is a releasable country, I'm also not allowed to mess with Volgast in any way before I release myself. I must load in and immediately click to release and play as Rugen. Now, what's the goal of this campaign? Well, would you look at that? Paradox has very kindly bestowed upon us an achievement that looks perfect for us. As Prussia or Germany have the Empire government rank and 40,000 regiments of Marines. Clearly we're going to be doing this achievement the way Paradox intended. So, my goal for this campaign is a simple one: form Germany. Since that requires Admin Tech 18, it's going to give us plenty of time to experience the absolute joy that is Marines only Rugen. So without further ado, let's get into the game. Upon loading in, as is required of me, I immediately kiss goodbye to lovely Wolgast with their lovely land force limit and say hello to Rugen. Population, me for the next 200 years. And that's about it. All jokes aside, Rugen is far from being the worst country I've ever played. We get to keep the surprisingly decent Pomeranian ideas which come with a beautiful plus 10% morale in the opener. Nice. And we get a rather unique flavour event coming up in just a few months, which is the actual reason I'm playing Rugen, and one of the few things that is going to make this run actually possible. Since, spoiler alert, I'm not going to be keeping any of our estates, I pick only privileges which will benefit me immediately, mostly in the form of various decisions that grant minor bonuses. Most importantly here is the free heavy ship and admiral from the burghers. I also grant every privilege that reduces crown land, since this will result in slightly more money when I sell titles after the month tick. Once that month tick has passed, I check to see if Volgast has allied Denmark. Thankfully on this run they chose Saxe-Lauenburg as their only ally, whom we should be able to handle. And after a month or two... Paradox? Ah, there it is. After what should have been a month or two, we'll get our special event, the Pirates of Rugen, to which, of course, we will be answering hell yes. Pirate Republics get access to a number of unique mechanics, including greatly increased naval force limit, ship capture chance, galley combat ability, and the ability to raid coasts, which, spoiler alert, will end up proving absolutely vital for this run. Most importantly of all, however, is that Pirate Republics get access to, by default, plus 50% marine force limit, without needing to wait to unlock any special government reforms or idea groups. Thanks to this buff, we are now able to construct a grand total of 1 regiment of Marines. Well, it's something at least. Thanks to the 3 galleys that the event ever so conveniently spawned in for us, we are immediately able to start raiding the coasts of all of our nearby nations. This provides us with a substantial injection of both gold and sailors, which I immediately put to use in building galleys, as well as hiring our 1 marine and a cog to ferry him around with. I also invest in 2 very expensive advisors which, while they do drain our treasury, make us eligible for the Radical Reforms event. I also start improving relations with both Lubeck and Denmark, for reasons which will soon become apparent. On the 26th of September 1449, after only a couple of years, I'm lucky enough to trigger the event. I choose the option to dismiss both of the expensive advisors, resulting in a tidy profit of 200 in both dip and admin points. On 1st of December 1449, the truce with Volgast finally expires, and I promptly declare war, citing independence as my casus belli. On paper, my forces are hopelessly outnumbered by my enemies, with them fielding a combined army of 10,000 soldiers, compared to my single marine. All is not lost, however. While I have very little chance of winning on land, at sea my chances are much greater. My single heavy and 6 galleys should be enough to defeat the Volgaster navy, and due to my status as an island nation, this is the only thing that matters. I wait for my last galley to finish construction, then check my land force limit. As you can see, I am now able to construct 3 regiments of marines rather than just 1. This is due to the fact that vassal nations give a substantial chunk of their force limit to their overlord, and now I've declared my independence, this penalty is no longer applied. The fact that I can now build 3 marines is actually a crucial factor in determining my approach to this war. 3 marines are enough to siege level 1 forts, which, conveniently, is exactly what Volgast has. My navy, captained by my 2-star admiral given to me by the burghers, is enough to deter the Volgaster navy from actually engaging me. Since I'm now blockading the strait, and the Independence CB only requires me to defend my capital as the war goal, technically all I have to do in order to secure my independence is wait until the war score ticks up. But I wouldn't be satisfied with this. Too long has Volgast oppressed the people of Rugen. We require revenge. The only thing that will satisfy us is the complete full annexation of Volgast into our glorious nation. This brings us back to the issue of how I am actually going to defeat the Volgast and Lauenburger armies, however. Despite tripling my armed forces since the war started, 3 regiments of Marines are still not going to be enough to destroy 10k. Well, what if we didn't actually have to defeat them? What if there was a way to circumnavigate them, shall we say? Thanks to my improvement of relations, I'm able to ask access through both Lubeck and Denmark, as well as get fleet basing rights from Lubeck, something which will prove vital to our success in this war. Unfortunately, as I am playing around with my marine in the Sea of Orsund, my 2-star admiral dies at sea, after less than 5 years in my employ. This ends up having disastrous results, as it gives the Volgaster navy the courage to face me in the open sea. The battle is a close one, but despite having an equal number of galleys and a heavy on my side, for whatever reason it seems Volgast has the edge. We managed to sink one of their galleys before one of our own starts to go down. Not wanting to lose this ship, I choose to retreat back to our port in Rugen to repair. With my fleet temporarily knocked out and Volgast in control of the seas, the combined armies immediately attempt to rush my capital and snuff me out for good, losing interest in my marine attempting to disembark in Danish territory. With enemy armies about to cross the strait into my capital, my navy has no choice but to sally forth once again to prevent the crossing. Sensing danger, with my navy still heavily damaged from the last sea battle, I choose to send only my heavy ship and my 2 least damaged galleys to face the enemy in the southern Baltic once again. The battle is another close one, with my 2 damaged galleys almost immediately disengaging, leaving my single heavy to fight alone. Once again I choose to retreat in order to get another repair tick, making sure that I retreat at the last possible moment so the enemy armies are given the smallest possible window of opportunity to cross the strait. With one last tick of repairs, I decide it's all or nothing. and send my entire navy out one last time. We score a decisive victory, sinking the enemy's entire squadron of galleys. With naval dominance finally secured, it's time to put the plan I was trying to execute earlier into action. It takes me a while to figure out the specifics, but what this plan basically consists of is attempting to lure the AI onto an island, where I can use my navy to trap them. I learned early on that it seems like the AI will always move to block any naval landing that is taking place in a province adjacent to them. Using all 3 of my marines as bait, I'm eventually able to get a hook. If you have a small army running around near an AI, they will sometimes lock on to this army and continue to chase it until either they catch it or it moves too far away. Unfortunately, the process of scoring this lock on is very risky, as it seems they will only start to chase you if you are very close by. Nonetheless, in spite of some close calls, I'm eventually able to get both Volgast and the Lauenburger armies to chase me into Danish territory. From here you can probably guess what's about to happen to them. Thanks to my fleet basing rights in Lübeck, capturing them here is made nice and easy. I station my armies in Lolland, wait until I see both stacks in Finn, and send out my cog from Lübeck. And hey presto, that's a 10k stack permanently trapped. As long as I maintain my naval dominance, there is absolutely nothing they can do to get out of this. Just on time, on the 1st of September, I'm able to pick up my first government reform. Since I'm not allowed any allies, this choice is a no-brainer. I think the Privateer's Way is one of the most fun and interesting government reforms in the game, and is part of the reason I wanted to do this without allies in the first place. I wish there were more government reforms like that in the game, which meaningfully change the way you play in exchange for some cool bonuses. Suffice it to say, the 10% army and navy morale, along with the +1 yearly Republican tradition, is going to be incredibly useful for us. With all of our enemies now permanently relocated to a Danish island, winning the war from here is as simple as waiting for the sieges. If their whole army is trapped rather than destroyed, the AI will never attempt to build new units, and is absolutely powerless to stop you. It takes some setup, but it is basically a free win button for any war. In October, I get my first election event of the campaign. I choose to re-elect our current pirate captain for free monarch points. Thanks to the Privateer's Way and having the Buccaneers in control, Republican tradition is never going to be a real problem for us this campaign, so I usually opt to re-elect our leaders unless they get a bad trait. I consider the idea of sieging down Saxe-Lauenburg for the gold here, but after I realise that I'm going to suffer constant attrition while doing it, and that I'll get a grand total of 15 ducats, I decide to simply offer them white peace. Once this is done, I march back to Volgast to wait for the siege. You may notice as I do this that the amount of sailors I have in reserve is dropping each month. This is a worrying sign of things to come. In December 1451, the fort finally falls to my marines. I capture a cog in the ensuing naval battle, and sign peace a few months later, demanding my independence and their full annexation. And here we are, 10 years into the game, and finally a fully independent country. I set some rivals, order the construction of a new galley in my capital, and start work on coring the new provinces. I'm now able to build a whole 4 marines. Things are really starting to look up for old Rügen. Here I get an event telling me that the people of Kolberg are revolting. I consider the option to increase autonomy and lower the unrest slightly, only to check the unrest of the province and see that it's already on 20. Yeah, my -3 stability, 4 war exhaustion, and my cruel ruler might have something to do with that. Given that the revolt is going to happen no matter what I do, I choose the option to add on an additional +10 unrest. Did I just say things were looking up for us? Since the revolt is guaranteed to fire anyway, I also lower autonomy in all of the newly conquered provinces, to at least try and get some use from them. I continue to raid coasts wherever I can, as it's basically the only thing keeping me afloat right now. Around this time I get a notification that I have never, in my 5,000 hours playtime, seen before. It's a herald from the Papal State telling us of unity with the Patriarchate. Upon zooming out, I noticed that AI Byzantium has collapsed into the Latin Empire. I noticed later that the Ottomans are at war with Poland, Lithuania, Hungary and the Pope in a 4-on-1 deathmatch to defend Constantinople. I know about this event chain of course, but it's surprising to see it pulled off so rarely by the AI. Seems like the Ottomans aren't going to have a free game this time around. The next couple of years passed by relatively peacefully, with me simply attempting to keep up on tech as well as develop my capital in order to stabilise the economy. Thanks to this internal development in combination with reducing autonomy, I'm able to up my marine force in it to a terrifying grand total of 5. We're really getting somewhere now. In January 1457 I choose our first courier ability with the 50 papal influence I've accrued. Though I'm tempted by the plus 15% national tax, choosing the plus 10% morale and plus 1 yearly prestige is the only real option. Unfortunately, this period of peace and development for Rugen was not destined to last. In the August of 1457, the revolt that had been brewing ever since the conquest of our former overlord is finally unleashed. 9,000 very angry separatists rise up in the province of Stralsund, determined to put a stop to the rise to power of our great nation. With only 5,000 marines in active service, there is little we can do other than hope we get lucky. For the next year and a half, the rebels rampaged through our lands, our brave marines unable to do anything more than unsiege the provinces they take after they move on to the next one. In January 1459, I am able to pick up our third government reform. As always when playing republics, I choose frequent elections. In July, after a round of raiding, I decide to pick up a naval doctrine. Instead of going for merchant navy like I always do, I decide to go for free oarsmen, for the plus 15% galley combat ability. After miscalculating which province the rebels were marching to, our troops are attacked in Stolp in April of that same year. Despite the rebels suffering a terrain penalty, our marines are unable to contest against the overwhelming numbers. We suffer a devastating defeat, losing just under half of our total army in the slaughter. Luckily, I am able to replenish our reserves of sailors thanks to a new round of coastal raiding becoming available, but this luck will not hold in future. Yet another badly calculated movement cost us another devastating defeat at the hands of the rebels in the January of 1461, this time leaving our army completely decimated, with only 700 battered marines being left alive. This defeat leaves us in very rough shape. Being forced to only use marines means that I am constantly struggling to keep my reserves of sailors afloat, with this being the main roadblock towards making any sort of progress in this challenge. In April of 1461 we embrace the Renaissance after having it spread via a nearby cardinal, though this does little to improve our situation. In May we finally catch a break, as I notice the rebels finally leaving our territory and heading into Brandenburger land. The Hohenzollern army makes swift work of them, finally setting us free from their tyranny. As you will continue to see with this campaign, what initially seems like a blessing turns out to be a curse in disguise. We receive the declaration of war from Brandenburg the following month. As we have 0 allies and close to 0 troops, declarations for war from our AI neighbours is going to be a constant feature of this campaign. Once again we are hopelessly outnumbered by our enemies and have no chance of winning on land, so our troops retreat to our island while our navy blockades the strait. Unfortunately, while attempting to bait the enemy army in Danzig, our forces are caught once again, suffering a devastating defeat. As I mentioned earlier, the process of baiting enemy armies with your own is usually very risky. Once again, nearly our entire army is wiped out, leaving, again, a mere 700 marines alive. Battered and bruised, we retreat into Lithuanian territory, while I try to come up with a plan. We have 0 sailors left in reserve at this point, and my occupied and devastated provinces are hardly providing any each month. This means that, until our next round of raiding, our troops will not be reinforcing. You're probably starting to understand the pain of this challenge now. For the next few months, using what remains of my army, I continue to try and lure the Berliner forces into following me up north. I'm trying to use the Estonian island of Urzel to trap Brandenburg's army, but this is not made easy by the fact the Livonian Order just happens to have a 7k stack of rebels in Goldingen, exactly in the way of where I need to go, who don't seem to have any interest in moving. Around this time I'm able to pick up my first idea group, and I am torn between 2 idea groups which I have never in all my playtime chosen before. While I am initially tempted by naval ideas, given that having a strong navy is literally the difference between life and death for us, I eventually settle on maritime for the plus 75% national sailors. Finally, in June of 1462, I am able to score a hook on the main Hohenzollern army. I run as fast as I can for the safety of Ursel, but my pursuers are hot on my tail. I am able to make it and to escape into the sea just before Brandenburg comes charging across the strait. And just like that, I close the trap, and the Berliners are introduced to what has become their permanent place of residence for the duration of this war. While you may think that this has effectively put an end to the war, our victory is far from secure. While the majority of their army is trapped, there are still 2,000 Brandenburgers causing a nuisance, along with 3,000 troops from Anhalt, who they also called into this war. With our paltry number of marines, these tiny armies pose a major threat to us. Being unable to defeat them, the next few months are spent trying to unsiege our provinces, while Anhalt continues to siege them back. With little other options, I choose to let the Anhalter army cross the strait into our capital, trapping them, yes, but also giving them a chance to take our most valuable province. After they breach the walls, I am left with no choice but to fight in the June of 1464. Thanks to our sortie, we score a decisive victory, only losing 500 troops and stack wiping our enemies, since they have nowhere to retreat. While this victory seems like a major one, I remind you that we cannot replenish any losses we take. There is nothing we can do to stop Anhalt simply rebuilding their armies, since their capital is protected by 2 Brandenburger forts. The remaining 2k troops also continue to pose a serious threat. Our homeland is secure for now, but with only 2,000 surviving marines, we have no hope of sieging down either of Brandenburg's forts. As I had predicted, Anhalt quickly rebuilds their army and returns to sieging down our provinces. Once again, I trap them on our island, and once again in the January of 1466, I am forced to attack them. Again we score another stack wipe, but it costs us another 500 of our brave marines. At this point I realise I have no other option in this war other than to wait until my next round of raiding becomes available, so the next few years are spent simply waiting. Our troops in Brandenburg simply staring each other down in Stramberg. In March of 1468, I receive an offer of white peas from Anhalt, which I gladly accept. In January of 1469, I am able to pick up our 4th government reform. The choice here is another obvious one. Establish religious institutions grants us access to the clergy estate, which I immediately start to make use of, bolstering our economy, development cost, and papal influence gain. Finally, in October, I am able to start raiding again. This provides us with an immediate 5,000 sailors, which I use to build up our marine force amid, now standing at 7 thanks to developing our provinces wherever I can. Finally, with an army capable of doing anything, I head straight for Brandenburg's fort in Prignitz. We don't have enough troops to siege Berlin itself, but we do have enough to take the fort and the surrounding areas, allowing us to take land in this peace deal. Very unfortunately, thanks to our high war exhaustion and lowering autonomy, in August of 1470, Volgaster separatists rise up once again in Kolberg. I'm forced to cancel construction of the new galleys I had ordered to be built, using the new sailors we had acquired from raiding. On the 16th of April 1472, the fort in Prignitz falls, and I order my troops to occupy all of the remaining unfortified provinces. On the 22nd of September, this gives us enough war score to peace out. I consider my options here, but ultimately decide that I need to take more land in order to scale and eventually stand any chance of defeating any of our enemies properly. I choose to take the forts in Prignitz and Berlin, given that I don't want to have to siege them again later, and that they should protect us in case of future attack. I start coring the provinces and consider my options in dealing with the rebels. With 7k marines, I should now be able to defeat them in favourable terrain. This is what ends up happening, as I am again attacked in Kolberg. However, we suffer massive casualties in order to do so, again losing more than half of our total army. Marines suffer a penalty of an additional plus 10% shock damage received, and the general ineffectiveness of Marines in combat is going to be a recurring feature of this playthrough. I'm starting to think these guys should have stayed on their boats. Only a few months later, I'm attacked by Bohemia. Here we go again. Bohemia has 30k alone, though apparently this wasn't enough, as they also called in their ally of Goslar and their vassal of Oppol, who bring an additional 11k to the party between them. How many do we have? 3,000. Well, I hope Brandenburg has been keeping Ursel warm. Our 2 newly acquired forts quickly fought our enemy's forces, and we are left once again with only the province of Rugen to our name. While this may sound bad, there is actually an upside. Bohemia and friends will now take care of any and all rebels that spawn within our territory. Hooray! I am able to do very little for the first few years of the war. My attempts at baiting the Bohemian armies into Ursel see no results, though I do manage to trap and bait Goslar's army in Finn, taking at least a few of our enemies out of the picture. Through use of some very risky manoeuvres, I am eventually able to get a hook on Bohemia's 20k stack. In March of 1476, they become the second army of the campaign to take up permanent residence on an Estonian island. While this is fantastic, it leaves me with a bit of a dilemma. Bohemia still has a 14k stack stationed in Stolp, and I am running out of islands. While I have managed to trap over half of the Bohemian army, this is still very bad. After considering my options, I realise that I have to get both Bohemian stacks trapped together. My only option is to let the 20k go. Removing my ships, I watch as the army I worked so hard to trap saunters back down into Goldingen. I quickly disembark my troops in Ursel, and as the AI sees this as a priority target to destroy, the 14k quickly appears in Reval, determined to wipe me out. Much to my delight, a little bit later, exactly as I had planned, I see the previously departed 20k appear alongside their fellows. The trick to getting the AI to do this is to make them think that my troops are always accessible while never actually letting them cross the strait. This is done through repeatedly moving my one bark in and out of the northern Baltic Sea. With all of our enemies in one place, trapping them here should be as simple as marching my armies into Goldingen before they can arrive. Unfortunately, however, due to the travel times between the provinces and my lack of transport ships to retreat into, my troops are unable to escape before they are caught by the Bohemians. We suffer a major defeat, though in doing so we have managed to achieve our object. The entire Bohemian army is now trapped in Ursel, leaving us free to retake our land. Because, however, apparently the game thinks this will be too easy, the month after we achieve this, we receive a notification from Stettin that they are planning to declare war on us. While in any other playthrough their 6,000 troops would be an absolutely trivial inconvenience, for us with only 2,500 marines, this poses a serious threat. Rather than normal war deck, Stettin sends us a threatened war for the province of Stralsund in June. Because the mighty and stalwart people of Rugen we are, we of course decline this cowardly attempt to threaten us into concessions, and once again we're in search of more islands. Conveniently enough, the Danes actually have 3 islands for us to use. Currently, however, access to these is blocked by the 5k Goslarians we trapped earlier. While I attempt to move these without suffering any casualties, due to the province travel times once again, I'm forced to sacrifice 100 of our brave marines. While this loss breaks my heart, it does achieve our object of moving Goslar's troops into Sjælland, freeing up Finn to be used to trap more of our enemies. I quickly attempt to lure Stettin's troops onto these islands, though this is made much more difficult by the presence of Goslar, who will stop at nothing to kill any Rugener marines they see. Once again, I realise that I will have to sacrifice some troops. The hardest choices require the strongest wills, I suppose. I station my troops in Lolland and remove the blockade, opening the way for the murderous Goslarians to set upon my helpless marines. My marines fight bravely, and as soon as I see the Stettin army cross the strait to join the fray, I rush my cogs back into the Sea of Oresund and retreat as quickly as I can. We lose another 900 men, but are able to retreat and trap Stettin on a Danish island. Finally, with all our enemies trapped, we can relax and win both of these wars. Hooray! Except, oh no, wait, Stettin calls in East Frisia, who has another 8k. Thankfully, Stettin will now accept a white peace. Right, now we can relax. Just ignore those 15k rebels. In May of 1483, I'm able to finish sieging Bohemia's fort in Dresden, allowing me to take land in the peace deal. Goslar sends me an offer of white peace in June, which I happily accept, and after spending a few months occupying the remainder of Bohemia's unfortified provinces, I'm ready to sign a peace deal in December. Once again, I have to consider my options carefully. Bohemia will give me 37 war score worth of demands, so I can't take a lot. I could go for full money, but I decide that the thing that will benefit my economy the most long term would be snaking to the gold mine in Egger. With that, we are finally at peace once again, though with our reserve sailors still at 0, 20 war exhaustion, and rebels occupying parts of our country, things aren't looking great. Despite this, the next couple of years pass relatively without issue. I'm eventually able to defeat the rebels, though it comes at the cost of yet more of our precious sailors. In June of 1484, we were able to select our fourth government reform. This one is perhaps the most impactful so far. Amphibious specialisation increases our marine force limit by 10%, as well as making all of our marines use 20% less manpower. In June of 1487, I'm able to pick my first age ability, choosing the option I almost always do for the minus 10% AE. Thanks to some light ships captured from Stettin, around this time I am finally able to start privateering to bolster our income by a small amount. On the 17th of April 1488, I see that the Holy Roman electors have chosen Anhalt to be the new emperor. This will totally not have any negative consequences for us in the future. I defeat more rebels, construct some new galleys, hire some cheap advisors, and develop my coastal provinces in order to buy down the devastation. In March 1489, I'm once again attacked by Stettin. They've called in East Frisia yet again, although this time I notice that for some reason they've deleted their capital fort. AIs will do this if they suffer enough financial damage, so it's surprising to see it after only a white peace. This war goes somewhat differently to the others. After checking my morale and seeing that I'm at a significant advantage, and checking the access map mode to see that East Frisia won't be showing up for a little while, I decide to take on Stettin in land combat. As I have done in a few previous wars, I let them cross over to my capital in order to stack wipe them. We manage this, yet suffer significant casualties. Another lucky round of raiding replenishes my reserves, but now East Frisia has arrived and is sieging down my fort in Prignitz. Thanks to my naval blockade, I am easily able to win the siege race, capturing Stettin on the 17th of August 1490. Since my marines have had a chance to recover somewhat, I decide to attack the Frisian forces. Unfortunately for me, at the last minute Stettin calls in their other ally of Magdeburg, who swiftly comes in to assist, causing me to lose the battle. After this defeat, the AI splits up its forces to siege me down, allowing me to catch the Frisian army in Kolberg, scoring a cheeky stack wipe. After this, a quick naval blockade allows me to white peace with East Frisia in January of 1492. The Magdeburger army remains a threat, however, and I decide it's best to settle the war early. I peace out with Stettin in December for 60 ducats in the single province of Stettin. Thanks to my war exhaustion, which has remained on 20 for the last 20 years, this single province cost me 237 adamant a core. Have I mentioned how painful this was yet? The next couple of years pass in relative peace. I pick up naval ideas as my second idea group, and continue to fill out maritime alongside the new idea group. Thanks to having to develop my provinces, I have been struggling for modic points all game, and am consequently behind in both tech and ideas. In August 1493, the clergy kindly request that we reduce our war exhaustion. Yeah, that's a good one. In that same month, I order the construction of a new fort in Kolberg. As with all good things in this campaign, this period of peace had to end. In March of 1495, I receive a declaration of war from Poland. Sorry, clergy. You may have noticed that we just got a dishonoured call casus belli against Anhalt here. You see, as a member of the HRE, normally we would be protected from outside threats like this. However, with Anhalt as emperor, and with Anhalt absolutely hating our guts, no one is going to be coming to our rescue. You may have noticed that, for whatever reason, Poland has declared war on us using a trade protection casus belli. Previously I was under the impression that this CB prevented taking land, but apparently that restriction doesn't apply to the AI, so no luck there. It does however make the war goal blockade ports, which ought to come in handy. You can probably guess by now what our strategy for this war is going to be. Poland and Lithuania have a combined 80,000 troops, so yeah, we're not going to be winning this on land. Thankfully though, our navy should see us to victory. I do end up being given a bit of a scare on that front early on though, as the Polish navy engages me in the Baltic, and I see that they have 4 heavies and 3.1 morale to our 2.9. I then see that they have Diplotech 7. What's our Diplotech, you ask? 4. Fortunately, however, all of my other various naval bonuses are enough to carry us to victory, sinking or capturing 6 enemy galleys and 2 enemy cogs, while losing 0 ships of our own. Using my marines, I capitalise on this victory, disembarking in Gotland and forcing out the Polish navy before they've had chance to recover, sinking the remainder of their galleys as a result. If you were looking for some actual tips on how to best use marines in this video, this is it. They're great at quickly jumping on and off your ships to snipe important targets, in this case fully destroying an enemy fleet. When used for this purpose in conjunction with other forces, they're actually quite decent. Just, please, for the sake of your own sanity, do not try to use them in place of your whole army. As you're probably getting used to by now, this war goes the same as all the others, with me being able to capture the entire PLC army in Özal without a hitch. One minor thing to note is that, since Poland owns these two provinces now, I have to make sure that I siege down Goldinga before they manage to take Özal back, since if they control both sides of a strait, they can cross over in spite of my blockade. With this done though, winning the war from here is as simple as sieging down all their provinces. Since I only have 9,000 troops at this point, this ends up taking a while, with Poland experiencing major rebellions all across their country and suffering massive attrition while trapped in Özal. In September of 1499, I choose my Tier 6 government reform. I go with War Against the World here, mostly for the -5 years of separatism, though the global CB is sure to come in handy too. I seize down everything I can without risking the wrath of the rebels and sign a peace treaty in December of 1503. I take full money and war reps, and the 3 provinces of Danzig, Königsberg, and my favourite province of all, Özal. With it now owned by me, I no longer have to worry about securing military access to it. In the final casualty screen, I see that Poland took 150k losses to attrition. Ouch. The signing of this peace deal signals the point in which things begin to turn around for us, where I'm able to spend the next few decades on consolidation and even conquest. Thanks to filling out naval and maritime, our marine force limit has now ballooned to 19, one higher than our regular force limit, funnily enough. It's cool to see that if you go over 100% marine force limit, the game just lets you build over your force limit with marines. August 1508 marks the beginning of the Protestant Reformation, spawning in Hamburg. This spells trouble ahead. In April 1510, I'm finally able to complete Build to Force Limit, the very first mission of the generic mission tree, 70 years into the game. Yeah, that probably puts things into perspective. I continue to raid, fight rebels, and in May I'm even able to buy down our war exhaustion, putting us back down to 0 for the first time in 50 years. At this point, I decide to try my luck with some expansion. With the War Against the World CB, the whole world is my oyster. In August 1511, I declare my first offensive war since my independence war against Wolgast in 1449, against Utrecht, Oldenburg and Berg. I'm able to win this war relatively painlessly, so let's move on to the peace deal. In June 1513, I peace out with Oldenburg and annex them. In March, I peace out with Berg, demanding full money, war reps and trade power, and in May, I peace out with Utrecht and demand their full annexation. The acquisition of these new provinces is massive for us, as it immediately opens up the whole of the English Channel for raiding, keeping us well stocked on sailors and cash. In January 1515, I attack Stettin, who is allied to East Frisia, Lüneburg and Magdeburg. This is another easy war, with the slow siege times without any cannons is already getting annoying. Once their forts fall, I peace out with Lüneburg and Magdeburg, only demanding money, before peacing out with those Stettin and East Frisia in October 1516, demanding the annexation of them both. In April of 1519, I attack Thuringia, who is allied to both Sweden and Munster. This is yet another easy war, with Sweden only sending 12k to be a nuisance, before they foolishly try and run through my favourite island in the world and get trapped as a result. This allows me to navally invade and take their capital uncontested, piecing them out in February 1522 for money and war reps. In March, I go to peace out with Thuringia, but it's here that AE is becoming an issue. Since I can't have allies, coalitions are going to be forming much more often than I'm used to, and I'm going to have to be playing much more carefully than I normally would. In the end, I demand only 2 provinces, along with the usual full money and war reps. Despite only 4 tiny nations being valid coalition members, the coalition forms regardless, consisting of just Goslar, Anhalt and Mecklenburg. This is a worrying sign that I have to be more careful. I haven't mentioned it up until this point, but another consequence of these restrictions is that I have been getting unlawful territory demands constantly all game. This is normally something that would be avoided by allying the Emperor if you're in the HRE. As a result of this, every nation in the Empire has minus 200 opinion to me, so if I take one province too many, everyone is desperate to gang up on me. It's for all of these reasons that I take espionage ideas as my third choice in October. Normally taking espionage this late into the game wouldn't have that much value, since normally I'd be big enough at this point for AE not to matter much anymore. However, with AE being such a limiting factor already, it would take a lot for someone to convince me that this was the wrong choice. After being weakened by me, Thuringia gets almost immediately devoured by their neighbours, and in April 1523 I attack Saxony, who's allied to Brandenburg and Brunswick. I take full money as usual from Brandenburg and Brunswick, making sure to annul Brandenburg's alliance with Poland, and after waiting a few years for my AE to tick down, peace out with Saxony in January 1527 for their full annexation. In October of 1527, I order construction of a flagship. While I'm tempted to create an unstoppable heavy, my economy still isn't quite in good enough shape to justify the expense. As I usually do, I choose to build a cheap light flagship, though instead of picking trade route map like always, I go with the spare Jolly Roger to boost my privateering efficiency. A year later, in November of 1528, I attack Magdeburg, who is allied to Sweden and Berg. Sweden is even less of a problem this time around, as they've just triggered the Dak War and have a grand total of 3k troops. I invade their capital once again and peace them out in July 1530. I peace out Berg a few months later and fully annex Magdeburg the following January. The reason I wait until January to make most of these peace deals is because that's when my AE will tick down at the end of the year. The month after I make peace, in order to prevent the coalition from growing too large, I attack Anhalt and I'm able to co-belligerent two of their allies, Bohemia and Lusatia. After losing a war to me, Bohemia is a shell of their former self, having lost land to all of their neighbours, including a powerful Hungary, who has remained independent and is allied to Russia. My army is now up to 29,000 marines, while my navy has grown to almost 60 vessels total. In January 1533, I annexed Lusatia. Since their culture is in the West Slavic group, I received slightly less AE for this with the rest of the HRE than if they were German, and in that same month I decide to annex Anhalt for their betrayal of 3 decades earlier. This will turn out to be a pretty massive mistake. With their annexation, the Habsburgs are once again elected to Holy Roman Empire by the electors. In that same month, in order to prevent coalitions forming, I attack Brunswick, who has 4 OPM allies. Unfortunately, just after I finish the siege of their capital, I receive an enforced peace demand from Austria. Not wanting to fight them with their powerful Burgundian junior partner, I decide to accept. This is totally not foreshadowing anything to come. In April 1535, I attack Lüneburg, whose only ally is Goslar. In July, I am able to pick my Tier 8 government reform, and as usual, it's an easy choice. Empower the quartermasters grants access to the Burg's estate, and I swiftly grant them a number of useful privileges. In January 1537, I make peace with Lüneburg, demanding their full annexation. Again, not wanting to give people a chance to join any coalitions, I attack Brandenburg that same day. In June, thanks to granting my quartermasters promote bookkeeping, I'm able to reduce my inflation, which had been sitting around 18% all game, on the cheap all the way down to 0. I'm about to finish my siege in Brandenburg when I receive a very troubling war deck. Citing Imperial Liberation as their CB, Austria has declared war on us. Unfortunately, the period of prosperity and expansion for Rugen is over. The dark times are about to begin. I'm not joking when I say that this war almost broke me. Throughout the whole challenge, this was the closest I came to quitting. You may think that I'm going to win this war in the same way as all the others, with help from a certain Estonian island, and that was my thought as well, but, as you're about to see, things don't exactly go to plan. All combined, the Austrian alliance has over 150,000 troops. The first important battle of the war comes at sea, with me sending out our navy to blockade the Burgundian coast. On the way, I encounter a huge Burgundian fleet of 6 heavies, including a flagship. While we do score a decisive victory here thanks to our naval bonuses, sinking 24 ships, You may notice that we are already on 0 sailors from the wars prior. This means that any damage our ships take can't be repaired. This is going to become relevant later. Almost our entire country is sieged down within a matter of months, and I'm having trouble attempting to blockade, as even the smallest of blockades cost sailors each month, which, might I remind you, we currently have 0 of. Our army has already suffered heavy losses at this point, which we have no way of recovering, forcing me to consolidate our marines. Eventually, the enemy comes to attack me in Ersel, and things are initially looking good, with nearly 70k of them trying to cross the strait. Unfortunately though, the rest of the enemy troops are staying put, with seemingly nothing I can do to change that. In August of 1550, I peace out with Brandenburg, demanding their full annexation. This is possible due to the fact that Brandenburg unconditionally surrendered to me earlier, so even though their provinces have now been retaken, I can still demand whatever peace deal I like. In the end, unfortunately, I'm only able to trap 65k enemy forces. Sounds great, right? Well, it would be, if that didn't leave still nearly 100k. At this point, I'm considering my options. Unfortunately, this time around I can't get Denmark to give me military access, so those islands are off the table. So I'm forced to consider options further afield. The islands of the Mediterranean seem like my only hope. I begin improving relations with Venice, who's one of the few people in Europe who doesn't yet hate my guts. I get access through the Ottomans and begin slowly making my way down to Corfu. I need to get someone to lock on and follow me, though the fog of war causes me to lose track of the pursuing Burgundians. This causes me to accidentally take a very bad battle in Branicevo, losing 7,000 marines and in danger of being stack wiped if my navy can't get there in time. My navy is greatly hindered in this by again running into the huge Burgundian armada in the English Channel. We manage to win, but again take more damage that I am now even less capable of being able to repair. Having fled into Corfu, the Burgundians cross the strait and attack my battered army in April of 1542. Once again, I suffer huge casualties, with over half of my remaining army being wiped out. With only 4k marines remaining, I retreat from the island into Yanya, but it looks like it's all over. I'm about to be stack wiped and left with no choice but to surrender to Austria. Phew! At the last possible moment, my fleet of lightships arrive in the Gulf of Taranto, saving my troops and trapping the 30k Burgundians. However, this victory proves very short-lived. Almost immediately, I'm surprised by a large Austrian navy of 1 heavy and 6 galleys coming down from the north. With my fleet containing only lightships, heavily damaged from the voyage, I have no choice but to retreat, allowing the Burgundian army I worked so hard to trap to escape. Things are really looking bleak now. I engage a smaller Austrian fleet with my lights and use it as an opportunity to escape back to my home island. I lose almost every ship to attrition on the dangerous voyage back. With my army, I attempt to retreat back north, heading to the safety of my island while I try and come up with a plan. Needless to say, during my occupation, my war exhaustion has swiftly risen back up to the max, and I am hemorrhaging gold. Bankruptcy is not far outside the realm of possibility. Eventually, I'm able to secure fleet basing rights from Venice, so, with little other options, once again I march my tiny, battered army down to Corfu. Eventually, I score a hook on an Austrian army, and 25k comes barrelling down the Balkans in an attempt to snuff me out for good. With most of my remaining navy now stationed in the Straits of Otranto, and able to at least resupply thanks to the Venetian ports, I'm able to capture this army much more smoothly, with my troops fleeing onto the boats. Well, that's something at least. Finally, we've made some progress. Things are getting tricky now though, as usual, I'm running out of islands. You may say that there are lots of islands in Greece and the surrounding areas, however, if I don't want to have my army wiped in the process, only certain islands are suitable. I need islands which border multiple sea zones, so my troops can retreat via my transports and not block the strait in the process, which would prevent the enemy army from crossing and ruin the whole purpose. I've lost a bit of footage here, but while I was considering what I should do, I decided to peace out Lucca. They have 7k running around, and taking them out of the picture is at least something. Being careful to leave enough ships to deter the Austrian navy from attacking, I load my troops onto the transports and disembark into Lucca. Thankfully, they aren't home, and the length of war combined with the naval blockade is enough to piece them out, even adding a few ducats to my treasury. With this done, I order my soldiers to head north and besiege Austria's fort in Scilly. Unfortunately, while my ships are resupplying, the Austrian navy sneaks past me and attacks my small bark fleet blockading their troops in Corfu. Quickly, I rush my ships from Spalato to help out and we manage to score a victory, though it costs me my flagship in the process. A new round of raiding allows me to replenish some of my armies and navies, and on the 23rd of September 1545, the fort in Scilly falls. At once, this triggers the remaining Burgundian Doomstack, whom I failed to trap earlier, to come marching south. I see that they're locked onto my army, and decide to do the only thing I can, retreating into the island of Venice. Given the problem I mentioned earlier, if I want to trap these troops, I have no choice but to let them attack my army. My marines fight bravely, and in spite of losing just under half of our army, they manage to avoid a stack wipe, and successfully retreat into the Gulf of Venice. With this, the Burgundian army is finally trapped. But it still isn't over yet, as Austria's allies of Ingolstadt and Landshut lay siege to Scilly. Desperately, I rush north from Friuli in an attempt to piece out the Bavarians. Although I've already trapped Salzburg's army, their fort is causing me issues in reaching the Landshuter capital. In January 1546, they manage to breach the walls in Scilly, and a few days later they begin to assault the fort. On the 24th, I'm able to piece out Salzburg, thanks to sending 100 troops to set on my capital. I occupy Steiermark and raise it to slow my enemies down. Scilly falls in early February. The 30k don't attack me immediately, not once to take the -2 penalty in the mountains. This gives me barely enough time to occupy a single Landshuter province. As I sit on their capital in April, there are 0 reasons not to accept. I just need one more month tick. Thankfully, the month tick does the trick, and I am able to piece them out with barely enough reason just before they retake the province. With Ingolstadt being a junior partner, I finally only have 5k Austrians to worry about and can breathe a sigh of relief. Now, all I have to do is retake my land and make sure I don't go bankrupt. This takes a while thanks to all of my forts, and is hindered by the remaining Austrian stack and a bunch of rebels who apparently all chose this exact moment when I'm about to win to rise up. Nothing can be easy for us, can it? After a painfully long amount of time, I'm eventually able to retake most of my land, only for it to almost immediately be taken by rebels. Luckily, they can't break my country while I'm at war. Prague falls finally in November of 1551, and as I'm about to start working on Vienna, when I'm attacked by Verden and Brunswick. While this may seem like a bad thing, at the very least they should fight a lot of my rebels for me. This they do, but once again my country is fully occupied and once again I'm nearing bankruptcy. These are called the dark times for a reason. I have no choice but to fight them in order to try and retake my country yet again. I managed to push them back before returning focus on Austria. With bankruptcy looming, 0 sailors again, and having to exploit development for cash, at this point I need to piece out Austria as soon as I can. I get as much war score as I can from occupying their unfortified provinces, and then piece them out, demanding war reps and 300 ducats. And with that, the Austrian Holy Roman intervention, which started in 1537, comes to an end in 1555. The war lasted nearly 20 years, and Austria lost almost 350,000 troops to attrition. Now that's a lot of bodies in Erzul. Thanks to some more raiding to somewhat replenish my reserves, I am able to peace out with Brunswick in July 1558, demanding some money and war reps. The war with Verden takes another year and a half to conclude, but I am eventually able to piece them out and demand their full annexation. It's now October of 1559. I'm on 20 war exhaustion, have rebels everywhere, and a battered navy and army. But, for the first time in 25 years, Rügen is finally at peace. Or not! Surprise! Here's yet another war deck, this time from Lübeck, who's called in 4 allies including Denmark. That's your peacetime over. Did you enjoy it? Hope you like more war! At this point, I was absolutely exhausted, so I decided to take a break. When I came back the next day, I decided to delete all of my forts. In all the time I had had them, they had proved to be nothing but a very expensive hindrance. After I had had to re-siege them all 3 times in a row, without cannons might I remind you, I just decided that I had had enough of them. If they were just going to be occupied by rebels or my enemies, then what on earth was the point? As is tradition at this point, the war begins immediately with me retreating all my armies to Urzel. If I ever go to Estonia in real life, I'm going to visit this island and thank it for existing. As always, I'm quickly fully occupied by my enemies, and I'm only able to trap 20k on the island. Unfortunate, but at least this time I have access through Denmark through virtue of being at war with them. In March of 1564, I am able to bait the Danish troops into rushing to my capital while I attempt to siege the island of Fyn in the meantime. Immediately they come rushing back north to try and stop me, but thankfully at literally the last possible second I'm able to take the province and prevent the crossing. From here I lay siege to their capital. In June I noticed that Russia has declared war on Denmark and Lubeck. They cross the strait in Urzel and wipe the Lubecker army. While this may sound like a good thing, it isn't. All this means essentially is that they have escaped from the trap, since the AI will now rebuild their army in their home provinces. On the 9th of September, I take the fort in Copenhagen and get the sack event. While I'm very tempted by the money, I don't want to lose my professionalism which I've been slowly building up this campaign, so I go for the top option. While I would have loved to take one of their islands, in August 1565 I'm forced to peace out with Denmark, as their army is about to wipe me in Stralsund, only being able to take a mere 200 ducats. The rest of the war goes fairly smoothly from here. I trap the reconstructed Lubecker army on my capital and very slowly work on sieging down their forts. In September of 1568 I peace out with Hamburg, demanding their full annexation. In March I peace out with Bremen, and while I would have loved to full annex them too, the potential coalition makes me just take money instead. And finally in June I peace out with Lubeck, taking just the province of Lubeck and money. At this point GovCap has started to become an issue. Pirate republics incur a massive plus 75% states governing cost, and this combined with the fact that I'm in the HRE, so I'm locked to duchy rank, means that GovCap is going to be a major problem going forwards. I never like spending my reform progress, but I have to use the expand administration feature here so as not to incur the extra AE from the peace deal. This single province cost me 323 admin to call, and Hamburg already cost me 363. Yeah, I think I need to do something about this war exhaustion again. Finally, we're at peace. Any guesses as to how long it'll last this time? 28 days! That's a new record. Yep, Austria has attacked us again, this time having Burgundy annexed and bringing even more friends to the party. Have I mentioned how much fun I'm having yet? Once again, I retreat to Urzel while my country is fully occupied. This time, I'm sensible enough to take max loans beforehand, though this may not actually have been necessary, as you'll see in a minute or two. It's during this war that I finally figure out how to get all my enemies into one place. As it turns out, moving repeatedly back and forth between Urzel and the Russian province of Revel triggers every single enemy army to come and try and hunt me down. I've no idea why this works, but I'm certainly not going to complain. Thanks to this new technique, I managed to get every single enemy army, all 141k of them, to stack up for me in Goldinga. I don't quite manage to trap them all, but 132 certainly isn't bad. After this, I have much greater success than the previous war, without anywhere near the level of stress. I peace out with Bavaria in June of 1573, demanding full money, and Württemberg in November, leaving me absolutely free to siege Austria down from here. This doesn't stop rebels from rising up everywhere yet again, however. At least I'm not the only one this time, as I notice all of Austria's western lands being sieged by rebels. In December 1575, I see the Dutch declare their independence from Austria, seriously weakening the Habsburg menace. In May of 1576, with rebels everywhere in my country, I'm ready to peace out. I go for an interesting deal this time. Rather than taking land, I spend my war score taking full money, war reps, breaking their alliance with Hungary, and taking the single province of Picardy in the English Channel, extending my raiding range further along the English and French coastlines. In only those few years of war, Austria and France suffered a combined 272,000 casualties to attrition. With this, we're at peace once again, though our rebel problems are not letting up. Make your guesses for how long it will last this time, people. Ooh, and who said 4 months? In September we are attacked by Poland, who has this time not only called in Sweden, but has also PU'd France. Yes, seriously. Oh boy, now that's a lot of troops. After spending a while improving relations, I'm able to ask access through Russia in August of 1578. Thanks to my newly discovered technique, I'm eventually able to trap 220,000 troops on Ozol. Glorious. Again, due to my lack of troops, it takes me a while to siege down my enemy's provinces. In December 1582, I peace out Sweden, taking the usual full money and war reps, and annulling the treaty with Poland. And I'm ready to peace out Poland the following month. This is another interesting peace deal. While I initially considered taking more land along the Baltic coastline, I realised that since France is a junior partner under Poland, I can take their provinces instead. I decide to take as much money as I can, along with the 2 French provinces of Bas-Poitou and Toulon. This now gives me range to raid almost the entire Mediterranean, greatly bolstering my gain of ducats and sailors. In January 1583, we're finally at peace, with Poland and their allies having suffered a monstrous 470,000 casualties to attrition. Yeah, I'm starting to think Ozol might not be the nicest place to live anymore. I'm happy to say that this peace deal finally marks the end of the dark times for Rugen. I immediately buy down my war exhaustion and start work on killing the frankly ridiculous amount of rebels rampaging through my country. In February of 1583, after embracing the printing press, we finally become a great power, nearly 150 years into the game. This might honestly be the latest great power status I've ever achieved in game, and unfortunately it's something Rugen will be struggling to maintain for the rest of my playtime. With the newly acquired sailors from raiding, I attempt to restore my army and navy back to pre-war levels. With the Polish war reps, I'm slowly improving my economy, making liberal use of burger loans to repay old loans. Despite this though, I'm still wondering why my income isn't as high as it should be. A quick check of the devastation map mode, and I see the issue. Yeah, I think I'm going to need to rebuild those forts. I'm now going to talk briefly about the religious situation. Despite all the centres of Reformation spawning so close by, and over half of my provinces being Protestant, I've elected to stay Catholic this time around. The reason for this is very simple. Portugal is defender of the Catholic faith. Portugal, who has 95,000 troops, before even mentioning their colonies. Later in the game, this number will swell to 145k. Staying Catholic means that not only will I not have to fight them every time I want to attack a Catholic, but that they'll also act as a deterrent for my non-Catholic neighbours anytime they decide they want a peace out of me. Around this time, the religious leagues also start to form. I quickly choose to join the Catholic side, given that it will automatically set all my fellow league members to friendly attitude, preventing them from joining coalitions against me, and hopefully making them a little less eager to attack me at a moment's notice as well. Despite joining the League, I have no intention of actually joining the war. You'll see how I manage this later. By 1586, I've managed to defeat all the rebels, have a solid balance, and have built up 32k marines. In October of that year, I attack Lubeck to take my revenge for their attack against me earlier, now that their Danish ally is busy fighting the British and will dishonour the call. This war poses no real challenge, however, without cannons, the level 5 forts constructed everywhere across the HRE by now are becoming a serious problem. I peace out of the war in May of 1591, demanding their full annexation. I also pick up defensive as my fourth idea group. There are several decent military options I could have gone for here, but the thing that appeals to me most about defensive is the minus 5% regiment manpower usage. One interesting thing about the idea build that I've chosen is that, in combination with the age ability, I actually have plus 4 blockade impact on siege. Neat. Shame all the forts I need to take are inland. A few years are spent on internal development before I attack the now OPM Allieless Mecklenburg in August 1594. I don't finish the siege until January of 1596. In May of 1596, I finally ordered the reconstruction of the flagship sunk by Austria now nearly 4 decades ago. For my next target, I go for Liège in November 1596, given that they're allied to the Palatinate, whose land I need to get through. In July 1597, with my economy in much more decent shape, I start the reconstruction of most of the forts I previously destroyed in order to reduce some of the nationwide devastation. This war takes another 2 years, and it's during this that the League War fires. Given that I'm at war with one of my fellow League members, I don't receive the call to arms. While I couldn't predict exactly when the League War would actually fire, I found that more often than not, if you keep attacking people in the HRE, you won't actually be called in. You always have to make a deliberate effort to stay at peace if you want to receive the call. Not participating is actually fantastic for us though. We continue to get the benefit of good relations with our fellow League members, as I mentioned earlier, and better still, we can continue to expand in the HRE, and almost everyone we fight will be greatly distracted. Even better, no one can join any coalitions while at war, so we don't have to worry so much about AE either. I used this opportunity to full annex OPM Bohemia in March of 1598. On October 1599, I peace out the Palatinate, taking their fort in Oberfeld. In January 1601, after a painfully long siege, I am finally able to peace out with Liège, taking money and war reps. In February 1604, when I judged their troops to be distracted enough, I attack Hesse, who holds 2 of the provinces required to form Germany. After some more incredibly painful sieges, I peace Hesse out in August 1607, taking the true provinces I require. The lack of cannons is really becoming an issue now, not just because of the forts, but also because it makes my troops supremely ineffective in combat compared to my enemies. Despite my huge morale advantage, I struggle to score victories even with overwhelming numbers. Take a look at this battle against the Palatinate here. Thankfully, I'm now at least close to achieving my goal. After finally defeating the Ottomans, the Catholics score a decisive victory. Check out this map of Albania. The next few years are spent waiting for truces and peacefully increasing my economy and force limit. My marine force limit now stands at an impressive 87, while my total force limit sits a little lower at 65. In December 1608, I build up to 60,000 marines, finally reaching the requirement of the achievement. You may notice that I'm not upgrading my units. This is deliberate. Since I'm not using cavalry or artillery, I'm keeping these at the minimal level, so that any rebels I spawn will be slightly weaker. With my income now reaching almost respectable levels, I construct courthouses in every province to try and tackle the GovCap issue. In September 1612, I declare war on the Palatinate. At this point I only need 3 more provinces to form Germany: Stuttgart, Nuremberg and Munich. Stuttgart is currently held by the Palatinate, and though you may notice that I can't actually reach it, my plan is to stay at war until I can take a province from Bavaria to connect up the land. Bavaria attacks Bayreuth in 1614 and begins to siege them down. As soon as my truce is up, I attack them both, pushing back the Bavarian army and stealing the siege progress from them. Unfortunately, Bavaria is allied to Austria, so I don't want to attack them directly, choosing instead to attack their weak ally of Coburg. Since I only need 3 provinces, I was planning on simply taking them as a non-co-belligerent. Unfortunately though, this plan doesn't end up working out. Even with the admin efficiency from Admin Text 16, taking the 3 provinces is just barely too much war score. In the face of this, in April 1616, I decide to break out Bavaria's alliance with Austria and just take the 1 province I need, in order to get as short a truce as possible, planning to attack them directly as soon as this truce is up. Given that I still have to wait a little bit for Admin Tech 18 anyway, I'm satisfied with this plan. I mean, the run is almost over anyway, right? What could possibly go wrong the next 8 years? With a connecting province secured, I peace out with the Palatinate for the single province of Stuttgart. My expansion has been slow enough and my army is big enough that I'm not seriously worried about the potential threat from a coalition at this point. I noticed a small coalition form after the peace deal, but it only comprises a few nations, all of which only barely have more than 50 AE. In May 1617, I peace out with Coburg with a simple white peace, and now I've pretty much won. I can sit back and enjoy my victory. All I have to do is wait for 1 truce with Bavaria, defeat them in a war, and it's over, and I can finally rest. This could be an issue. As it turns out, the EU4 AI is not going to let me get out of this that easily. Despite my now 80,000 marines, a small coalition of Austria, Trier, Frankfurt, Dithmarschen, Goslar, Baden and Cleves has declared war on me. All combined they have just under 200,000 troops. If I lose this war, they'll demand very heavy concessions, slowing me down immensely and quite possibly destroying my hopes of completing this challenge. Remember that the later the game goes on, the more and more of a massive disadvantage I'm going to have in both combat and sieging due to my lack of cannons. You might think that I'm just going to island trap them as usual, but as I may or may not know from an alternate reality, this doesn't work. Yep, no cheese this time around. For whatever reason, no matter what I did, I just couldn't get all or even most of them to chase me into Urzel, despite it working like a charm before. Welp, looks like I have no choice but to fight this legitimately then with my marines. In this, there is one tiny thing that gives me hope. Thanks to some investment earlier, my forts are all now level 4, and all in decently defensible terrain. The Punitive War is a show superiority casus belli, meaning that the war goal is to win battles. If I can just win enough battles without losing too many forts, I may have a chance, just a chance, of winning this. At the start of the war, I immediately rushed to as many of my forts as I can and scorched the earth. I've fought this kind of war before, and I'm used to the key battles taking place on these provinces. Raising the provinces means that our enemies will be slower to reinforce the battles, giving us the hope of winning them before they do. Unfortunately, while I'm trying to reach Niederhessen, with my troops still recovering their morale, things get off to a rough start. I'm caught by Austria and Paderborn, and even though they're fighting on a -2, and I have a whole 1 morale on them, just look at how many losses I take compared to them. Yeah, this is what playing without cannons means. This war is an incredibly intense one, and unfortunately I can't go through all the close calls I had in trying to win it. What my strategy boiled down to was trying to target any weak stacks that I saw and attacking them for war score, while praying that the AI pulls off any forts to try and reinforce before they take them. Thanks to the show superiority CB, even wiping a 1k stack gives me a nice 3.5 war score. The downside is of course, though, that any lost battles that I take come with a heavy cost. I do my best to sink Austria's navy, as even naval battles provide war score, though I'm already hemorrhaging sailors, even with a 40k reserve at the start. Within only a few years, this reserve is depleted completely, meaning my troops won't be reinforcing. I've grouped them up into one doom stack here in order to try my absolute best to deter my enemies from reinforcing each other. Obviously I have no chance of winning if all my enemies reinforce each other. However, usually in a war like this, it's relatively easy to stop the AI from actually reinforcing battles if you march around with a big enough stack, despite the fact that they could win if they all actually did. The AI clearly takes into account troop quality though, as they had no trouble reinforcing to defeat me here. After a few years of very careful troop movement, I'm able to reach the max war score from battles. It's here that things get tricky. In case you're not aware, in order to peace out of a coalition without giving away land, you need to get up to 50 war score. The AI gets a -30 modifier for any peace deal if you don't reach this number. I have ticking war score at this point, but unfortunately that isn't going to be quick enough. If my enemies manage to take a single one of my forts, it's all over, as I have absolutely no way of sieging them back. The final section of the war is all about scrounging any tiny bits of war score I can to reach 50. I try to retake as many provinces as I can, blockade Austria's Dutch ports, and siege any outlying provinces I can reach, having to be careful not to get my detached units killed by the bloodthirsty coalition members. After some agonisingly close calls, I am finally able to peace out with the coalition for 545 ducats on the 20th of October 1625. While I managed to barely defeat Bavaria in the background, I'd like to just give a few brief thoughts about this challenge. This was, in a word, hell. The rules that I set at the start of this challenge all came together like Voltron to create, without a doubt, the most miserable experience I've ever had playing this game. Unless you're a masochist, or in need of YouTube clout, never ever do this. A lot of what made this challenge hard isn't actually to do with Marines themselves, but the rules of the challenge. Being restricted to one type of unit, and therefore not being allowed cannons, makes the game so much more tedious and painful. Having access to mercenaries is also something I really missed. This would have been fine in the early game if it weren't for the other fun quirk of Marines that they use sailors rather than regular manpower. I was never really held back by the Marine force in this game, thanks to all the modifiers for it you can get. But instead, what consistently held me back was lack of sailors. Look at all these modifiers I stacked for max sailors, and I was still running out of them at the end. All of this could have been pretty easily manageable if I had been allowed allies, though I feel like I may have ended up completely relying on them, and it not being much of a challenge as a result. I think in future, if I do a similar challenge, I'll allow allies, but only for defence. The fact that I was constantly being attacked in this game slowed down my development so much and was really just such a pain thanks to the war exhaustion and endless amounts of rebels. Still, despite the amount of suffering I went through to achieve this, I'm still proud of sticking with it to the end and completing the goal of the challenge. Pirate gameplay is something I've always enjoyed, and this challenge did give me a chance to play a bit more of a navally focused game than I usually do. It also gave me a chance to experience being poor and weak right until the 1600s, which was, yeah, fun. Here we are in 1629, forming Germany and being rewarded for our efforts with a nice shiny achievement. Thanks, Paradox. Here are the stats if any of you are interested. Unfortunately, I don't actually have any way of proving to you that I only ever used Marines, so I think you'll just have to take my word for it that I never built a single regular unit. I could upload the entire unedited footage, of course, but there's something like 20 hours of it. I'm sure none of you want to go through that. The save will be in the description, just in case any of you feel like taking a look yourself, and with that I'll leave you with the timeline. Thank you ever so much if you stuck around for this long. This is the longest video I've ever edited and uploaded, and I'd be very interested to hear your feedback. Hopefully this style of content is someone's cup of tea, and I hope to bring you more of it soon. I'd like to give a big shout out to Ruse Gaming Den, whose content I've recently discovered and have been binging obsessively, so thank you for the inspiration for this video. It wouldn't exist without you. And of course to Flurry Roy for the inspiration for this specific challenge. Check out his VODs if you want to see someone far more talented than me take on this challenge. And with that, I bid you adieu.